While I love Bill Connelly's SP Plus rankings, his quarterback list came out today. And while it's good, there are still some questions. Who do you have as your top quarterback, and who are the surprises? That's next on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. We are brought to you by Mazda. We put the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. We're going to be discussing surprise quarterbacks a little bit later on in the show. Who are the players that probably aren't getting the recognition that they deserve? We're going to go through Bill's list, talk about a few. I want your take, whether you're listening live or later. Comment down below. Darian Mensah's ranking. I think that's the one in particular I was most surprised about, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But he was a little low for me. That's the only quibble that I have. Who's number one? It's debatable. CJ Carr is number one for Bill's list, but do you think he's that kind of player, or do you think he needs another year? CJ's only going to be a redshirt sophomore this season. There are a lot of reasons you could go in either direction because he was impressive, but he's a barometer for what can happen if you have the right pieces around him. We'll talk about that. And overall, this is my take. I love Bill Connelly's lists. He has stats that back up what he says. That's always good. Empirical data never goes out of style. But there are certain factors that are important. Do you trust them in a big game, in a big situation? Do you trust them against a defense that's a bit unusual, where you need to change protections, change plays, go away from the passing game? Quarterbacks don't like that very much. They want to pad their stats. They're human. Do you hand it off more against certain defenses because your team first? There are a lot of different things you can look at that change a ranking, if you will, and not just go by the stats. So while, again, I love Bill's list, I think everybody should have their own barometer for who's a tier 1, a tier 2, or a guy that we just don't know much about. And we're like, let's just see. Everybody has their list, and there is no one perfect list for quarterbacks. College football, the rosters are always changing, and quarterbacks are a part of that. So keep that in mind. To that end, here are a few of the questions that I have about any quarterbacks that I look at. Before I go into Bill's, I'm going to share my screen and show some of his list. Here are the questions that kind of go into what I just talked about from that theme, and let's have a little fun with it. Number one is just trust. When the chips are down, do you believe? I don't care if it's Darian Mensah. I don't care if it's Trinidad Chambliss, Arch Manning, CJ Carr, Jaden Maeva. If it's anybody, it could be Ryan Brown from Purdue. It doesn't matter. Do you trust that player? That's a very important factor. And it's one of the reasons that play calls go the way that they do. I'm not sure that there are many guys that you really believe when you're like 4th down and 10 from your own 15 that you're really all that confident in. You're in 1 minute to go and you're in a bad spot. Who do you trust? Number two, unselfish. This is something I really hit on a moment ago. Do you know how to change the protections and the plays? Part of that is all the pregame stuff in the offseason. That is important. If you're not studying the playbook pretty much daily as a quarterback, why? And how are you helping your team if you don't? The most important thing a quarterback does is put his players in a position to succeed. Changing protections, understanding the plays, knowing what the opposition's going to do. Like, you should be studying your first opponent from spring on. You have to at least look at it. I don't care if it's a team that you think is going to get bludgeoned by you. How do you maximize? That's something that Nick Saban talked about a lot. Kirby Smart, Marcus Freeman, you name an elite coach, in some way, shape, or form they talk about. Are you maximizing every game to get better? It's not the score. Are you getting better? That's a checkbox. Number three, 3rd down, is it not a liability? A lot of quarterbacks, they don't do well when they're behind the sticks, and I understand that. Not many will do great because you have more DBs on the field, more pass rushers. Okay, that's fair. But there are certain guys that just find a way to thread the needle. Who are those players? And here's a great stat. 3rd and longs, The best quarterback in the country last year was CJ Carr, 27.7% in terms of conversions. That's really good. I don't know how many guys are up over 20%, but Darian Mensah was in the low 20s, etc. If you can be at least 1 out of 5 on 3rd and long, you're pretty good. It's a really hard situation. That's something to look at, but just 3rd down in general. Do they trust you to make a 3rd down and 4 pass? Or, especially if they're in plus territory, are they just going to run the ball and go for it on 4th and short? Teams that never throw it on like those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4s, how much do they really trust their signal caller? Number 4, this is one of the end-all be-alls for me at every level, especially pro football, because the defenses are just so talented. How accurate are you, and do you know when to adjust to throwing the deep ball? Whether you're throwing a bullet, like a level 1 ball that you're trying to hit, back shoulder fade that's 20-plus yards down the field, or are you lobbing it down on a level 3 ball? Are you threading the needle over the linebacker and between the safety, like 15, 16 yards down the field? There are so many different ways you have to look at the deep ball. It's not just the bomb that you throw 40-plus yards. Deep ball is really anything over 20 yards before a player makes contact with the football. Can you throw it? Do you know when to throw it? Do you know the level and the trajectory that it needs to be passed? All those things are complex, but the teams that win big at any level, they probably have a quarterback that at least has some semblance of how to do that. So with that in mind, I'm going to go into Bill's list here, just to get started. Nothing all that eye-popping. It's most of the names you would expect. But again, Mensah's a little lower. We'll get to that in the second segment. Here is Bill's list. He's got Carr number 1. I don't think that's all that crazy. I think he's a top 3 quarterback by any measurement. And I'll give my list a little bit later. But he's got him number 1. His stats last year, 2,741 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, 66% completion, 14.1 yards per completion, 134 non-sack rushing yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He was consistent beyond that first half against Miami when that was his first start. Not only did his offensive line not help him out, he was just not ready for that moment, in my opinion, and it hurt him. But at the same time, as the season went on, he was better and better. And I really don't think many teams are going to be all that ready for him, especially with the talent they've added. And I know they lost Love and Price, but they're still going to be good. 2, he's got Julian saying, I don't have any problems with this. 88.4 QBR, 36-10 in passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Here's his incredible stat, 77% completion, 12 yards per completion attempt. He's an elite player at throwing the football. The one thing that I questioned about him, how well will he run? I think he needs to go out and get a few more rushing yards. A guy that doesn't have to worry about running is Trinidad Chambliss. Didn't even play a full season. He had 600 non-sack rushing yards and 8 scores. QBR was 86.5, 39-37 in passing, 22 scores, 3 picks, 66.1%. 13.4 yards per completion. You could argue Trinidad's number 1, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. I know Kiffin has moved on to LSU, but the coaches they've brought in around him, not just like the OC, it's a semblance of what they've run before, and they've got connections to Ole Miss. It shouldn't be that big of a change. Now, some of the roster has. Caden Lee has moved on. He's transferred from Ole Miss to Missouri. They lost a few players onto the NFL, etc. But Ole Miss always has a guy. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Arch Manning, we'll end the first segment on him. He was a guy that kind of struggled in the Ohio State game, but he finished with 31-63 passing, 26 scores, 7 picks, 61.4%, a little low, 12.8 yards per completion, 537 non-sack rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. He's a valuable asset, and I think the clock for him really started as far as him being an elite guy in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State. They made any error, he took advantage of it. And he went and made plays on the run. He made plays from the pocket. I don't know why, but the lights seemed to kind of go on there. He was under duress in some of those key plays and he made it happen. I don't have a problem with him here. I wouldn't have him quite that high. But Arch is one of those guys that I think is one of the better quarterbacks for this upcoming season. And their offense is absolutely loaded. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this list. I've got some 3rd down numbers to discuss. Matter of fact, I'll put them up right now just to kind of give you a quick look. Why am I bringing up 3rd down? This is a segue to what's so important. And again, it goes back to this too. Do you trust people? Number 3 right here, 3rd down. Is it not a liability? That's very important. We're going to get into all that and more right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda and moving the game forward. For me, it's pretty simple. You have to have guys at the quarterback position that everybody trusts. Everybody knows that if you don't do well at quarterback, especially in big games, your chances of winning without a defensive scoop and score or pick are a problem. Let's talk about Julian Sayin for a little bit. Talked about Carr was a redshirt freshman. So was Julian. 77% last year. And he still has things to work on, but I think he's a great example of how he handled the pressure of being the Buckeyes quarterback, and he did so consistently. Didn't matter if they were playing a completely inferior opponent or they were playing a team like Michigan, who is the arch rival. He was steady. For a young man to come in and do that in his second year in Columbus, that's very, very impressive. I think he is a guy that should be absolutely considered for the Heisman, and he could lead the Buckeyes to the title this year. These remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the field, dialing in every detail, giving that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get us there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. Today's show is also brought to you by us, and it's talking about Locked On's own deal here, the Everydayer Club. $5 a month or $50 for the year. The Everydayer Club is very, very straightforward. You're going to get your audio podcasts with no ads. You can't get a better deal than that. I take my pods on the go wherever I go. Gym, for a walk, long drive. When I'm out with friends, I have to have something to get there. I'm driving, even if it's 20 minutes, I put in a podcast. Ads aren't the funnest thing. $5 or $50 for the year. Plus, there's a Discord. Check out the description in the link below. Now, let's get back into the list here a little bit, and we'll look more at Bill's list. I stopped with Arch Manning, and there's certainly plenty more here just to kind of go through. I think Arch was a really good barometer for how things can start to turn. He got it going, and Jaden Maeva is another one. This is a guy I think will be top 5 this year. He's got good players around him, and I know he lost Mekhi Lemon, among others, but 89.9 QBR, 37-11, 24 scores, 10 picks, 65.8 completion, 14 yards per completion, 258 non-sack rushing yards, and 6 more scores. I'd like to see him run a little bit more, but I think he's going to be really, really good this year. I would be shocked, actually, if he was not. To that end, I think Dante will take another step forward. He got kind of bludgeoned against Indiana like most people did, but overall he was really good. 78.5 QBR, 35-65 passing yards, 30 TDs, 10 picks, 71.8 completion rate, 12 yards per completion, 284 non-sack rushing yards, and a couple of scores on the ground as well. If Dante could do a little bit better, and I think them not throwing as many screens would probably help because all their speed, you'll see more vertical passing, more midfield passing with him being a fourth-year player in college. I imagine that Dante Moore will be in the Heisman race, not only because he's really good, but because he will be more exciting. I think that the interceptions are the one thing. At 10, if he's going to be in that conversation, that's got to go down. Number 7 here on the list is Drew Mestermaker. And this one's I got him a little lower. I'll explain why in a second. But Drew for Oklahoma State, he was at North Texas last year. And he came over with Eric Morris, set the nation's passing mark with 43.79. He paced the country. 34 scores, 9 picks, 68.9%, 13.7 yards per completion, 224 non-sack rushing yards, and 5 scores. Good athlete, but he played G6 competition last year. How does he handle that at the P4 level? And, I mean, Oklahoma State's got like 50 new players just from the portal. It's pretty much an entirely new roster. I have no idea what that's going to be like. Most people in Oklahoma State's football office probably think they do, but at the same time, from a stats, how many yards would he have thrown with a mediocre Big 12 line? Because that's probably what it's going to be. Is he going to be over 3,200? I don't know, but it's just really hard to say. He's the most difficult guy in this group to really project. It could go about any direction. Gunnar Stockton, his stats are a little better than I thought, but I still think that he's limited against elite defenses because I just don't think he can really thread the needle consistently. But they scheme it up pretty good. And I know Bobo gets hammered by Georgia fans, but 28.94, 24 scores, only 5 picks, 69.7%, 10.8 yards per completion, 532 non-sack rushing yards, and 10 more scores. He's a gamer, is an old line, and there's a little bit of that in Gunner's game, but he's better than just a gamer, especially that pass he made against Tennessee last year to basically win or tie the game up, getting a situation where they could win it. That was as good a throw as I saw in 2025. But is he good against teams that can really mix up the defenses after the snap? That's always the end all be all. I still think there's a ways to go there, and I don't think they trust him to lead the offense against top teams. I mean, like they really would rather run the ball. That's my sense. Maybe that's just Kirby, but that's my take. I think it's a little overhyped, especially with Darian not being in this group so far, but I digress. Brendan Sorsby transfers from Cincinnati to Texas Tech. 2,800 passing yards, 27 scores, 5 picks, so 5.4 to 1 interception or touchdown interception rate's pretty good. 61.6 completion rate's a little low, 13.5 yards per completion, 616 non-sack rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. Graduate student, he's been through it all. He's at Indiana, he was at Cincinnati. Now he's back home in his state of Texas where he played high school ball. I would imagine he's going to be really good, but he's not going to have to throw it everywhere. Texas Tech's schedule is a complete joke. So I would imagine he's going to have a good year, but he'll be standing on the sidelines a lot. He may not end up in my top 10 because he's not tested, but this is a really good quarterback and one of the best players that was in the portal. Byrum Brown, I would have had higher. He knows Alex Golich's system. He even started 2 games as a freshman. Now he's a graduate student. I think he will be plug and play because they brought in not only 5 receivers from USF, but the starting center for the Bulls as well. So checks with the line of scrimmage will go through the guy that he's used to, and he's probably going to trust his center in general. Now, statistically, 31.58, 28 scores, 7 picks, 66.3, 14 yards per completion, 1,121 non-sack rushing yards, and 14 scores. I think he's a top 8 quarterback nationally. That's just me. And again, system awareness, it is massive. And here's number 11. This is the last one I'll go into. Darian Mensah. This is a rather interesting quarterback because he transfers from Duke, where their defense was literally 121st in the nation. You had to carry him. 76.6 QBR, 39.73 passing, 34 scores, 6 picks, 66.8%, 11.9 yards per completion, 156 non-sack rushing yards, and a score. I think he had to carry the piano on his back quite a bit, and I would have had him a little bit higher. That's just me. I could go through the entire list. And for those of you who are interested, obviously, Bill Connelly is on ESPN. He does a very good job. And I think that this list overall is really good. Mensah is the only one I think that he definitively has too low. Not having him in your top 6 or 7, I just don't understand how that's possible. But he's still only, like from 7, he's only 4 spots down. So I digress. It's one of those scenarios you have to figure it out yourself. What do you think? But comment in the chat or down below if you're listening to this later, whatever it may be. What do you think of Bill's list, top 10 or so, with 11, if you will, with Darian Mensah? Who do you think was left out of that top group? Who's way too high? Whatever projection you want to talk about, fire away. I'm curious. We'll talk later on that as well, and I'll get into the chat here in just a minute. Now, as for me, I have my own list, and you can kind of go with this any way that you want. But this is who I have, and it kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes I've got Darian Mensah 1, sometimes I got CJ Carr 1, sometimes I got Trinidad Chambliss. There are 4 or 5 guys that I don't have a problem with you putting in M1, but there was a stat that Bill talked about that caught my attention. Those 3rd down and longs. There is nothing that is a bigger gut punch as a defense than being in a 3rd and 12. You got them where you want. You got your speed package in the game. You're in dime defense. And then he just throws a dime. The coverage is not even bad. There's pressure on the QB, but it's 1st and 10. Carr had the highest rate. He was 27.7% on those. And he was a redshirt freshman. He's probably going to take a step forward knowing the system. And they added Graham. And that's why they got several players coming in that are going to help. But the 2 receivers from Ohio State in particular should help. And I think they're going to be forced to throw it a little bit more. You can't lose Jadarian Price and, of course, Jeremiah Love and not be like, oh, we're just going to do the exact same thing. Carr's a year older. Offensive line ought to be really, really good, especially if Charles Jagusa is playing. That could be the best line in the country. I would imagine that CJ is going to have quite a bit of time to throw. I think that right now, if I had to pick one, I'm going Carr 1. I've got Darian Mensah 2, Trinidad Chambliss 3, Julian Sand 4, Dante Moore 5. Maeva is number 6, Byrum Brown is number 7, Arch Manning is number 8, Brendan Sorsby is number 9, and I've got Drew Mestermaker at number 10. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go. If you wanted to put Say in number 1, if you wanted to put Maeva in number 1, because you're projecting on whether or not these young men are going to take a step forward. I mean, if you wanted to put Gunnar Stockton number 5, you could convince me that there's an argument to be made. But playing at Georgia, I just don't think they're going to give him the tools in terms of the play calls to be a force. In other words, he's always going to be a complementary piece. Georgia's offense, passing game is always complementary. Even if they're throwing it more in that game, it's screens, get the ball to the tight end, low risk. That offense does not use the quarterback like a lot of other programs do because their defense has so much talent. They don't have to. They want to run the ball, play defense, and let you try to go against more talent than what you have. That is the formula Kirby Smart has. But Gunnar is at least borderline top 10. And he was the only guy that I really thought should drop out. And it wasn't by a lot. So quarterback is one of those spots where, again, you can go in any direction you want. That's totally up to you. But I'm going to have some more fun with this. When we come back, we kind of went through Mensah. We're going to talk a little bit about a few of the surprise quarterbacks. And I'm going to read some things in the chat. And we're just going to have some more fun with this. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage that they should always look for. The biggest stretch of the college basketball season is here, and that's why it's so important. Buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and all those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next morning. Being there live, though, for a great basketball game, I had the pleasure of going to a couple this year through the Game Time app. It's an awesome opportunity. There's nothing like being in an arena like Rupp Arena or going to Duke or wherever it may be. All those insane bottom end of the barrel games are out. This is when it matters. Going to this stuff, this is bucket list. The hard part, though, is getting those tickets to those games. Long queues, prices. You're not sure if you're really going to be able to trust them. Game Time, their app, it allows you to trust it. Again, I've used it twice. In their innovation, it's how you unlock amazing tickets. I got in and out both times, 5 minutes. Found the game I wanted. Look at the seats, and then I click on it, and I can see my seat view to the middle of the court. No problem. Get out of there in 5 minutes. It's really simple with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. We are also brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. And it is the flavor draft. 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Free Rainbow, Cotton Candy, and there's something for everybody, to be honest. They do a really good job over at 5 Hour at coming up with something no matter what you're really into. For me, I'm a pretty traditional guy, and I'm a snow cone guy. Blue raspberry. Once I saw they had blue raspberry, that was it for me. But cotton candied is intriguing. They got some vanilla hints in it. It's got some fruity flavors to it. There are different ones as well. Like cherry's an easy one to go with. Berry's an easy one to go with. Strawberry banana. How about sour apple? There are so many different ones. Again, they've got 18 flavors. Check it out. Find your new favorite flavor with 5 Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or over at Amazon. Let's continue to have a little more fun with all the quarterback stuff with Bill Connelly's SP Plus. Pre-spring quarterback rankings for the People Award, 68 quarterbacks. If you want to check it out, it's on ESPN. I'm going to pull it back up here and kind of go through the list a little bit more. But is there anybody, just off the top of your head before I throw this back up, you're like, this is a guy that's going to surprise? Who's it going to be? If there's anybody out there that you think is definitive, comment in the chat. I'm going to pull this back up, and then we'll go down the list here a little bit further. There's one or two that I think have been kind of forgotten. Let's see where the rankings are. We got number 12 is a good one. Devin Dampier. This is a pretty good. Last year, the coordinator's changed now. He went from Utah to Michigan with the whole coaching change, but 24 scores, only 5 picks, 24.90 through the air, 63.5%. He had 11.8 yards per completion, and almost 900 yards rushing from non-sack and 10 scores. Devin Dampier is really intriguing. Obviously, Sam Levitt at LSU, Josh Hoover, I don't think those are going to be surprises. Either one can be in the top 10. Barry Bachmeier is a good one. He's a guy that runs the ball well, 624 non-sack yards. but he threw for 3,000 yards. It's just that they don't have the kind of receivers that you're going to challenge teams vertically in the red zone. Like they're not going to run fade balls in the red zone. They're going to try to run it, screen you, hit little crossers, be a little more conservative. Maybe they take the step forward this year. They got some pretty good players coming in. CJ Bailey, this is a good one. He gets a couple of his guys, JoJo Trader and Chance Robinson. They used to play with each other at SFE. I think this is going to be one of the more needed players to step up because I don't think NC State's defense is going to be all that. Last year, 3105, 25 scores, 9 picks, 68.8% completion, 11.4 yards per completion, 377 non-sack rushing yards, 6 scores. He has progressed so much since I saw him as like a junior in high school. It's insane. Bryce Underwood, I need to see it, but I'm not exactly sure what Utah is going to do with the offense. That's an intriguing one. Marcel Reed, he's got to lower those interceptions, 12 picks. John Mateer, same kind of deal, 11 picks. He's got more people working around him, a more experienced line. I think Mateer will end up at the top 15. Damon Williams, do his players around him trust him? Do they trust him after he tried to leave, come back? He could be top 10, but he may not be top 30. He's the boomer bust guy. And here's the one I was looking for. I didn't know where he was. Avery Johnson. I'd forgotten about him, and I saw him on the list this morning before I went and hit play for this show. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Avery Johnson's back at K-State. New head coach. It's somebody that knows the program. And they got a whole new staff, so I'm not going to go into it. But last year he was solid, but then they just weren't in sync all the time. 23-85 through the air, 18 scores, 6 interceptions. That's a little lower than it should be. 59.8%, 11.7 yards per completion, 555 non-sack rushing scores, 8 more touchdowns. Maybe he takes that step forward. And then the one that's just fun to watch, just want to mention, Jerron Kiave Sangapolatele from the California Golden Bears. Man, he's a really talented guy. I don't know what his completion percentage will be in year 2 because they got a new quarterback system. Got a lot of good players there, though. If they let him swing it around, he was 64.2% last year. I bet it's closer to 70. So last year, 34-54, 18 scores, 9 picks, 10.9 yards per completion. I'd like to see him run a little bit more, but man, he can really throw a pretty ball. Kevin Jennings, that's another guy. SMU, he'll be a third-year starter at SMU. That's important. And then my guy Ryan Herring's over at Locked On Badgers, who like this. Colton Joseph for Wisconsin. He's a heck of a runner. He had 179 yards against Indiana last year on the ground, 26-24 through the air, 21 scores, 10 picks, 59.7 completion rate. So he's not super accurate, but 15.2 yards per completion. I like to throw it down the field. 1,100 non-sack rushing yards, 13 scores. They got Winora Sellers 25th. I'm not going to really dive into that, but I just don't think he's got enough help up front. He had 8 picks last year, only 13 scores. They just don't have enough players around him. I think that's a shame, but nonetheless, let's see what we got in the chat. All right. What's going on, Salty? I do not believe the full measure of a quarterback can be reached by way of statistics alone. I agree. A quarterback must be a leader of men and have a full command of the playbook, set protections, and read the defenses. Amen across the board. Salty, quarterbacks are not remembered for what they did in the biggest games, but they accepted in smaller games that you get to the bigger ones. In other words, don't lay an egg against an inferior opponent. A lot of guys, man, that's so frustrating. They do that. Elite quarterbacks must have an indomitable will to win and cannot be broken by not always reaching that goal. This is a characteristic of Montana, Stabler, Favre, Namath, Brady, and Mahomes. You're not going to get any pushback from me on that. Elite quarterbacks hate losing far, far more than they love winning. That's probably true. Should a quarterback remain in high school through his senior year rather than reclass and go to the college a year earlier? I think they should. Most of them should stay in high school because it's about reps. Jaden Wade is the quarterback at IMG Academy. He's as athletically gifted, strong arm, size, height, and all that you're ever going to see. Like, you will be the next elite guy. We knew that when he was in 8th grade. He has a chance. He's already committed to Georgia to reclass. Georgia's not going to tell him no, but he wants all the reps he can. I think it's smart. Should a quarterback aim to start ASAP or back up a more experienced quarterback and learn from him for 2 years? 2 years is a lot if you're elite. I think it's subjective to each player, but playing as a freshman is a rough road to go. If CJ Carr wins the Heisman, then Den Brock produced 2 Heisman winning QBs in 4 years at 2 separate schools. Would that place him and Riley at the top of the quarterback developer list? Possibly. I'm trying to think who else you would put up there. Because, I mean, everybody moves around so much, it's really hard to say. Ryan Day would have to be in that conversation too, but I'm probably missing somebody else. My list of teams you asked for is Clemson, SMU, Georgia, NC State, and University of Florida. It's interesting. Katie says CJ Bailey is undervalued. He is. It's because he's at NC State. It's not a elite program. It's a second-tier program. Carson Beck was a quarterback that would lose you a game. Beck interceptions with the game on the line cost Miami 3 games last year. She's not wrong. Will Ole Miss have that guy without Kiffin? Kiffin is a quarterback whisperer. I think that the system that they're running, and that the guy allegedly, I forget his name, that came in, he's been at Ole Miss. He knows the offense. I don't think there'll be a big difference. Katie, going back to a previous show, Pete Nico says there are several players lining up to test the NCAA's new shadow portal regulations. Yeah, I've heard the same. So that's why with the players not being employees, they can't do much. And that's why those penalties came out that the NCAA is trying to pass. For those of you who haven't seen it, I've already got it memorized. Coaches, if you play a player that transfers in the spring or whatever, you lose the first 6 games. No recruiting, no meetings, no practices, no games, nada. You lose 5 scholarships the next year, and you lose 20% of your football revenue. You talk about trying to drop the hammer. That's a lot. Hurricane Chicks. How much do you think CJ Bailey will elevate NC State's with all the transfers? I think they all kind of elevate each other. Some of these guys know each other. They grew up together. Chance and JoJo knew CJ their whole life pretty much. I think the congruent nature of quarterback and receiver will come into play, especially in big games, when they can throw a fade ball or when they should just throw it away. I think it'll help them, but they're going to have to win shootouts. Their defense is just not very good. CJ Bailey is my 26th surprise quarterback. I wouldn't have any surprise with that. Hey, what's going on, Raymond? Glad you could stop in. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it. But again, before I dip here, I just want to kind of throw up something again. These are the questions that I had earlier. I want to come back to them. Trust. When the chips are down, do you believe in that quarterback? Number 2, unselfish. Does he do the things preseason, during spring, during summer, during fall camp, to understand the offense, the protections, the plays, to maximize the players around him instead of just padding his own stats? Third down. Is it not a liability? Are you that guy on third down that can thread the needle even if somebody's coming at you? And finally, the deep ball, whether it's a laser on a back shoulder fade 20 yards down the field, or you're feathering the ball over the linebacker, but still in front of the safety, level 2 ball. Those kinds of things and that understanding is important in addition to just throwing the absolute 9 route, the go ball. I think anything 20 and over to me is a deep ball, and it's a pain. When you play a quarterback that can thread the needle between defenders, that is the difference. So those are some of the things that I looked at with my list. And again, I've got Carr and Mensah at the top. Everybody's got their own opinion. I got Maeva in the top 6. Some have him lower. I'm a little lower on Gunnar Stockton than what some people are, but it's a lot of fun to talk about this stuff right before spring ball really ramps up. There's a few schools that have started, but in about another week or so, about everybody will have started spring. And we'll have news. We'll have stuff to talk about. But thank you once again for checking out the Portal Podcast. Please like and subscribe if you have not already. Become an everydayer. Check out the Everydayer Club. Down below, there is a description. Make sure you check that out and have some fun with it. But again, we truly appreciate you coming in, and we're going to do this stuff every day at noon Eastern. This is what we do here on the Portal Podcast. Have fun with the live show. So please, everybody, come back and see us. We'll see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.